So let's go ahead and just dive right in then. Prey is the latest controversial craze on Twitter these days, and of course elsewhere in other social media communication platforms, where people can't seem to decide if it's the greatest Predator movie ever or if it's the worst Predator movie ever. I will say that as somebody who has not seen the original Predator, I felt that as an action movie, it was fine. I didn't hate it. But it's definitely far from perfect. What about you, Corion? What are your initial thoughts, real quick?
Okay, so I think it is a perfectly acceptable movie, but I have issues with calling it a Predator movie. I feel like the best things about a Predator movie were even with modern day tech, the Predator so outclassed on a technological level alone, everything he was fighting, that putting them farther back in time just makes it even more of a cakewalk. So to me, it would be the equivalent of fighting a modern professional soldier, basically with just a stick. There's no way you're going to get close enough to this guy to use said stick, especially if he's got like ISR and everything else in play. It's not going to happen, right? So putting it in a 300 years in the past just makes that technological gap even further. One of the other pieces that makes it very important part of a Predator movie, every single one of the Predator movies, somebody makes the comment about how it is the hottest it has been since forever, okay? Because the Predators only show up when the climate is incredibly, incredibly hot. Initially, when they show up in the jungle, it's the hottest week this jungle has seen in a very long time. When they show up in LA, it's super hot in LA. And then the third movie, they take them to what the equivalent is a planet that's a game preserve. And even on that planet, they mention how much hotter it is than Earth when they're trying to figure out whether they're still on Earth or not. They make no mention of that in this movie. So with that in mind, I have a hard time calling it a Predator movie. The tech looked a lot more primitive. They're even calling this guy the primitive Predator, which I don't know. I have issues with. I have no idea why the dude was not walking around with the plasma cannon, which is like the signature Predator weapon. I feel like him firing, a ferromagnetic slug, but the only thing I can explain that weapon as seems kind of more advanced than the plasma weapon in a lot of ways because it homes in on targets. So I'm not sure what this movie is trying to be, whether it's trying to be this showing us a more advanced Predator or a less advanced Predator, but it just doesn't follow the timeline well of the other Predator movies. So it would be a good fan fiction side story. I have some issues with the character development and the whole story arc, but action-wise, looked cool.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that when we get to what we did like about the movie, or John might try to segue us into that now, because I know you've been sitting there eagerly ready to respond to Corion, and I actually have a response too, even though I'm coming from a different perspective though. So John, why don't you go ahead and let's engage in some respectful fight or discourse. Excuse me.
So I love the movie. I was actually watching it the day it came out while Parker and I were doing Casual Filth a couple weeks ago. And I was talking to Parker the whole time. I was like, this is exactly what a Predator movie is always supposed to have been. And I don't remember the heat thing being that important, so I can't really comment on that part. But as for like the technology, as for the Predator himself being different in terms of like his approach, that to me is the difference between the evolution of predators and the evolution of humans. Like humans, we it took us until the 1800s to discover that evolution may or may not be real, and until 2022 we're still debating on whether or not it's actually occurring. Whereas the predators, are a species that realized evolution is 100% a thing that matters and have been doing everything they can to become the alpha of alphas, the most apex predator of all time. And I think what we got was a taste of a semi-apex predator. Comparatively to humans, predators are probably apex in their birth, which we've never seen, which I still love. I love the fact that we have no idea what the predator homeworld looks like. I love that we have no idea the true nature of the predators. And I like that this movie didn't try to tell it that to us. It didn't try to give us that. The primitive nature of the movie relates to the nature of the United States. And that I think is really fun. But as for like the weapons versus like plasma and stuff, the thing that the Predators movie, the one before this one, really highlighted was that it wasn't just humans in the nature preserve. Like they were bringing every single race they could find at the same time. And so the difference where I see with the plasma weapons is I feel like obviously they didn't get that from us. They had to get it from someone else. And theoretically, they just hadn't done it by 1700s American time. Or while this guy was here in 1700s America, another predator was somewhere else finding that.
So here's where I can argue that point to you. Because Alien versus Predator, we know the plasma cannons were at least as old, if not older, than the pyramids in South America. Because they grabbed one from there. Yeah.
So, but then that also goes back to the Predators movie with the debate on the two factions. There's the alpha predators, and then there's every other predator, and every other predator is also on the game preserve. That's the predator that gets on the ship and blows himself up in that movie was one of the non-alpha predators, while the predators that were hunting the people were the alpha predators. And that could explain it as well. Not to mention, like, we haven't seen them totally use faster than light travel. So it could have been that he left with what he had and landed on Earth, and by the time he gets home, he finds new stuff. And then on top of that, like, this is my favorite thing about time dilation and space travel. Like, one guy could leave with all primitive tech, get there, and find out that like his ancestors were there first with better tech. It's kind of like the whole ancient aliens debate. Like, how long have humans had electricity?
Right, but now we have to start getting into the debate of like a backstory that could have easily been fixed by just staying more true to the original story.
But doesn't that make the story seem more realistic?
Because, it really doesn't to me.
All right,
the difference between Chinese vessels and American vessels, like seafaring vessels. Chinese, the largest seafaring vessels in the universe, as far as we knew. And the Chinese didn't take America, the Americans did. So, like, tech isn't exactly the answer.
So, I'll go ahead and just give my response to both you, sort of, and then I'm going to list off the things that I felt were problematic with this movie. So, Corioda, yes, I kind of am with John on this one a little bit, because when I watched the Drinkers review, which, was spoiler central, oh well. Although it's not like there's much to spoil. The plot's pretty simple. Creature shows up, people attack creature, the end. That's a super basic summary. So, what when he said about the whole, with it being 300 years in the past and the predator getting itself stupidly killed, I was like, well, yeah, that's probably how the other predators learned to advance their technology and their tactics, was because this savage warrior was able to outsmart them, even though they do have some advanced tech, just not as advanced as what we see supposedly in the first movie, and of course in AVP, the only Predator movie I've ever actually watched all the way through. I know, shoot me. That's not an.
If I had a plasma cannon.
Yeah, that's not an invitation.
If I had a plasma cannon.
So, what I did, so with it being 300 years before the first film, that's a Predator that's 300 years behind on understanding humans, and the fact that it's dealing with one of the most savage groups of people when it came to the battlefield, it makes a lot of it did make sense. Now, somebody did point out to me at work today that the French traders.
Hold up. I think it is important to note that when you say savage, you're not being derogatory. You're talking about their overall physical prowess.
When they were
ability.
when they were on the battlefield, they were animals. But that's most anybody. That's what Arnold becomes in the Predator movie. He becomes an animal to defeat the animal.
I mean, the Comanche themselves were the Spartans of the United States. They were the most feared.
Fan mail from Maria with T and Telly. You guys are the best. And yes, when we say savage, we don't mean by the derogatory term. You're right. It is like, no, we literally mean the very base
aggression.
Yeah, exactly.
Violence.
Like no, you're down to like primitive. Like, okay, first of all, they're a very basic. So one of Drinker's complaints was the fact that the Comanche were, there's no character development. Okay, the Comanche were a very simple people, like most tribes, and that's not a bad thing either. That's perfectly fine. It's actually great. I personally strive to live a simple life, and if I could live one like the Comanche, where I hunt and gather and then eat and sleep, that doesn't sound
with your friends and family.
With your friends and family all the time, every day. That sounds fine to me. So that's not a bad thing at all. Yeah, but
there's a great line I think that sums up humanity when dealing with predators and what you kind of have to become in order to beat them. And Quark observes that, humans are great, wonderful people so long as they have their creature comforts. But when you take away their creature comforts, starve them and run them for days, they turn into the most savage and bloodthirsty Klingons. A little teaser discussion there. Starting in September, first Tuesday in September, we will actually begin our Star Trek Deep Space Nine watch through. We talked about it internally. We decided, even though other people are doing it, guess what? We're jumping on the bandwagon. But also, I haven't watched Deep Space Nine, I think, since 2012, 2013. No. I want to say 15 or 16 was probably the most recent time I watched it through with my wife. And I'm due for a new watch through anyway. John, you just finished Next Gen, and Corion just loved DS9, so it made logical sense. So yes, starting in September, we are doing our Deep Space Nine community watch through and review. We will have schedule posted on what episodes we're doing which week, because here's how we're also going to do it. We're going to try and burn through the first couple of seasons. There's a couple of episodes that we'll make time for, but a lot of it's a pretty rough slog, so it's going to be summary for the first couple seasons. And once we hit season 3, it'll probably be about 1 to 2 episodes a week. But all right, back to the Predator, the Prey. I did. It made sense, and he didn't have any armor, so he wore a dumbed-down version of the plasma cannon that used projectiles. The technology did make sense, I think. Now, what bothered me, here's the two big standouts that I have a hard time doing. The first one's not as big of a deal. It's the fact that she was able to take on... Now, her scuffle with the other male warrior of the tribe, I could see him holding back. Okay, she knows his brother. If he does too much damage to her, his brother's going to
go toe-to-toe with her brother.
Yeah, brother's going to kick his ass.
No, she didn't go toe-to-toe with the brother.
No, I know.
She went toe-to-toe with one of the other warriors.
Exactly, and that other warrior knows who her brother is, and that her brother will kick his ass if he does too much damage. So I can buy him holding back.
I hear you.
When she was scuffling with the French traders, that felt like a little bit much at times. Now, I can excuse and overlook that because it's still an action movie. So, I
can even go further in excusing it because she was raised by Spartans. So if we remember 300, King Leonidas' wife could have gone toe-to-toe with any of the Greeks minus the guy who won the Battle of Thermopylae. And she probably would have won every single fight.
Right.
Yeah.
So like
didn't he in 300
the thing about the Comanche?
Didn't he actually
or American Spartans?
Yeah, didn't Leonidas actually make the joke in 300 that he was like, I could have marched the women up here for all the fight you gave me?
So
exactly.
Fan mail from Rin Shari says, I thought he was a bow hunter. Obviously the Predators could nuke the people from orbit, not the point. He goes bare fist early, claws versus wolf, arrows versus arrows, and bomb versus French ambush. He's trying to be honorable, and over the course of it, the Predator totally starts getting on an adrenaline high, starts taking hits, making mistakes, and like they basically reverse roles. He gets really arrogant. Yeah, that's a very good point, and I'll definitely touch on that when we get to what I did like. Now, here's the one fatal flaw for the movie that this is why it's gonna get lower marks for me, is that stupid axe on a string. That was, you might as well have given her a lightsaber at that point. That's how fictional that weapon is. Now, some people in that do master that art with that type of weapon, okay, they practice with a stick first. Her just pulling it back and suddenly being able to catch it and have those reflexes, no. At the same time, again, action movie, it still fits the spots of action movie. But is there any last things that we want to touch on that we didn't like before we move on to what we did?
Just fan mail. Haha, her magic Kratos axe. Yeah, pretty much.
But nobody complained about Kratos' axes when they were playing God of War. Like,
that's because God of War
video
is like
game.
And this is a fictional universe against predators.
And that's why I said action movie. It's not.
Yeah. So
they were going for some realism, but at the same time, I could tell. And there's probably stuff in the original Predator movie that I have yet to see that'll probably stand out as like, okay, we're reaching here, we're reaching there, but we'll see.
I think Renshaw hit it very well when he spoke about the idea of like, yeah, the predators could nuke from orbit. That's not what the predators are doing. The predators aren't going to Earth to kill humans. They're going to Earth to be better predators. So they're going to, like, the whole movie really showed how she was legitimately a great predator. She knew what the predator, like, what a predator thinks when they're hunting. The Comanche were the most notorious hunters of all time. An American, like, prior to the conquistadors and, you know, the colonists. And that's what I loved about the scene, was the fact that when she goes toe-to-toe with the French people, none of them have ever practiced hand-to-hand combat since they ditched swords. Yeah. Most people ditched their swords early on, as soon as they could get a gun, because learning how to fight with a sword takes years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's the difference between her and her competitors.
Yeah, also got another fan mail from Rin Sharp. Magic axe made by mythological dwarves versus has string.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any last did not likes before we give our praise?
I'm gonna hit the big ones for
the
did not like here.
Go ahead.
Look, this is what it boils down to for me. There isn't a tribe in existence that doesn't have a certain level of utilitarianism to them. Okay, you have to make certain sacrifices for the group in order to survive. That's just how tribal life works. Okay, you have to accept sometimes that, like, the tribe really, really needs somebody who's like, I don't know, a string maker or something along those lines. So that is what you are taught. That is what you are brought up to do. That is what you do. You do it really well. They make it clear very early on in this movie that she is by far one of the best medicine people they have. She was able to identify the herb lore necessary early on. They show that very well. To me, it seemed very clear they were grooming her to take over as the tribal healer as soon as they possibly could. Now, when they lost a hunter and they're going out to get it and she tags along, it made sense what her brother said to bring her along, because they're basically turning her into a paramedic at that point. I get that. I respect that. That makes sense to me.
No.
When
that I think is automatically wrong, just for the main point that, like, it started out very early on in the movie describing the ritual of the hunter. I cannot remember what it was called, but she is going, like, the whole movie is about her rite of passage into hunterdom. Like, she herself is working on becoming a predator equal to the tribe's predators.
Okay, she may want to be a hunter.
Like, emphasis. No, but the tribe considered that a right to every, like, I don't know how old she was, but like every 18-year-old has the right to join the predators of the tribe, join the war parties, and to do that, they have to hunt a hunter, which was the whole idea. Like, that's why the brother thought she was hunting the lion. But in reality, she's like, no, I'm hunting something else.
Okay, but hear me out. These footprints. Hear me out. Let me finish on this one. Okay. Because I can get this person wanting that, but we either have to accept that this show has modern sensibilities and is going to follow a modern reality. If we're doing that, then then the historical stuff doesn't matter anyway, and we can just throw it off as a cheesy action flick that is abusing history to be able to make its point. Or we can accept their right. Or we can accept that this is at the very least trying to show a historical context of what would have happened in this time frame had this sort of scenario happened. If I'm looking at it from that perspective, in that perspective, it may be that is a tribal custom that, look, you have to go hunt a hunter. That makes sense to me. Here's the problem with it. You are not going to allow very valuable people to the tribe to put themselves at risk if you can avoid it. Okay? That is just not a thing that you do. If you have, even modern day, if the US military found out that some dude working for the military was an absolute computer genius and was going to be able to, like, pull up Russian nuclear codes the same way that, you and I check online banking, there's no way they're going to hand the dude a rifle and be like, we're going to drop you into Afghanistan and see what you can do. Right? That's just not going to happen. No matter how many protests, no matter how much arguing he does, that, well, I want to go out and, like, join, the teams and do a drop into North Korea to go hunt down some dude. They're not going to let him do it. They're going to say, no, we need you breaking into computers because that's what you're really freaking good at. So,
yeah. Real quick, we got fan mail from BM says Mary Sue Pocahontas, which, okay, if you want to expand on that, please do. And Maria Tiatelli with a smiley emoji back at you, and of course, fan mail from Rinshar says, yeah, engineers can draft dodge. Agreeing with Orion.
Yeah, so that's my issue, right? If you've got somebody who's arguably an incredibly good healer, they can want to become a hunter all you want. And there are even scenarios where the hunting party may say, yeah, you know what? Come along with us. The chances of you being injured here are relatively minor, and it may not hurt to have somebody who can dress wounds given into the terrain we're going into. I can understand that. I can respect that. When shit starts hitting the fan, when they start realizing that they're not just hunting some big cat, where things are going bad, and they realize they're fighting what effectively would amount to them as a demon of air and darkness,
and
that's when you start pulling it out.
The tribe never saw the predator. The only other member of the tribe that saw the predator was the war chief when they were tied to the tree. That was the moment when he asked her, wait, so that's what you're hunting? Because nobody believed that she was hunting anything other than a bear or a lion, and she said, no, I'm hunting something bigger. And they were like, what? No. Like, the whole movie, no other Comanche saw the predator unless they died by the predator. And they never had time to tell anyone. Also, they were in their known territory. At the end of the movie, she goes, we believe the colonists are here. Like, they had, in this instance, they weren't a traveling party. At the beginning of the movie, at the end of the movie, they had been in their land, known territory. So, like, whatever she's doing...
Well, now you see, that raises another great point. If the movie calls out specifically they're in the Great Plains. I've never seen that many hills, that many forests, that many, like, rivers with waterfalls in the Great Plains.
That might just be what they call it for their region, though. So I think that's what John was trying to say. Real quick, John, take that fan mail, please.
Oh yeah, fan mail from Rinchard. This goes back to what I was talking about. She starts out real arrogant, but ends up being the only person who knows what they're fighting and is capable of understanding it. Right, but her arrogance is more in the sense of audacious. Like she's taking on like she's being bold. She knows that she is hunting something that they've never hunted before, based off of like individual studying of the things that they're seeing. She's not special and like everybody else is going out of their way to say that she's wrong because she is a girl. Like there's a lot of instances where their arrogance is what gets them killed, because she's like, no, I'm pretty sure there's something else here. Look at this footprint. It is not a bear and it's walking on 2 legs. And they're like, no, it's a bear.
Okay.
And she's like, what can she say? No, look at all of the historical references have to bear footprints.
I get where you're coming from.
Have no history on that.
I get where you're coming from. The problem is there's been too many movies in the last 5-10 years where it's arrogant girl believes she's right.
And that's why I love this movie, because I think they showed it in such a way that it's actually realistic.
I don't know.
I do
agree with John on that.
But so is
I respect
every
your opinion.
20-something I've ever met. I've never met a 20-something male or female that isn't arrogant and confident in their own beliefs.
Okay.
So like
I understand where you're coming from. I do disagree though, because I think it's a level of, because they told her she couldn't, she decided to go do it, and that is just a narrative I'm tired of seeing.
But
Well,
okay.
And I think
at what point are you saying that they said she couldn't? Because there were 2 different times where it's like when they tried to grab her, that's because they were following orders of the war, bring her back to the camp. And she was like, no, I need to go. And they're like, no, we have orders. And then she tries to fight them. They whoop her ass. She gets sent back to camp. Then the other instance, like literally there was no other instance after that where she was told she couldn't. Because every instance after that, she was on her own. Once the Predator killed those 2 people that were trying to take her in, she was solo. And like nobody knew where she was. The brother thought she was dead, and then she couldn't find the tribe or the brother, which is who she was hunting, and then she gets picked up by the trappers. Like there was very little push from like when she said she wanted to do the hunt, the medicine woman who brought her back from her concussion was like, do you know why you're taking this rite of passage? And she was like, to prove that I'm a hunter. And she's like, no, it's to prove that you can survive on your own against any opponent. And now we see her start to build on that thought from that instance. Like even the medicine woman didn't say, quit your hunting. Exactly. Like I felt like I totally agree. There are tons of Mary Sues out there in film, and I can't stand it. But this was one of the first times where I've seen a female lead go through the hero's journey and get beat just like any other male lead, just like Luke Skywalker, like
she beat herself first. Yeah, she beat herself first by failing with the Lion attack because she didn't she was focused on killing the thing, and in the process lost her bearings and got knocked herself out. So she let herself down. And fan mail from Rinchar, she outright says she's doing it because they say she can't. So that is a line from the movie. I don't quite remember.
But more in terms of like, you said I'm not strong enough. Like every male I've ever met. Like that's why most of them joined the Marines, was because everybody said they weren't tough enough to do it. And then they went to boot camp and passed. And it was like, well, how did you pass? And it's like, well, because I thought I could. Because like, the only people that don't pass boot camp are the people that actually fail and fall into that idea of like, I'm not strong enough to be here.
Or the unlucky bastards that get medically discharged.
Yeah, so guys, I guess there's an easy way to settle the Mary Sue argument overall. Okay? You've heard of the Bechdel test. I'm going to refer to this now as the Corleone test, okay? Which is really simple. We take a character that we think might be a Mary Sue, okay? We completely swap the gender of that character and run through the arc. If that person is still insufferable as a different gender, then they are definitely a Mary Sue. Agreed?
I'm curious to see how this is going to apply, so I'm along for the ride.
No, I think a Mary Sue is like...
Because hold on. Obviously, so in this test, Corione, are we going to flip the genders of everybody? Because we kind of have to.
We're just flipping the main character. We're going to say...
Then the plot's dead in its tracks. We have nowhere to go. Because now it's like, oh no, this is a warrior. Oh, it's a male. Okay, it's good. He can pass.
No. It's a male medicine man. Let's be clear. It's the doctor.
Oh, male nurse. Okay.
She's not okay. Actually, I found that out.
It's the doctor. And the doctor
that's
decides, I want to go play hero.
That's okay. So that's the thing that I can actually hit. According to what I can find on Wikipedia, all women in the tribe of the Comanche from the age of 12 are taught to cook meals, make tipis, sew clothing, prepare hides, and perform other tasks essential to becoming a wife and mother. So like her relationship with berries is more like boys' school versus girls' school. But her relationship with hunting is more like my brother is a war chief and my sister, and I'm the sister. Like there's, to me...
Okay, then this whole thing boils down to a plot of an episode of The Simpsons.
Well, no, so if we're gonna do your own test, the person we have to replace her with is not just a guy. It's a younger brother.
Okay,
and
so
in that instance, she meets all the marks of a normal younger brother.
No, because we're keeping it as a doctor though, right? Because that's my point. My point
wasn't a
is
doctor.
that
We don't know if that was her
education
assignment,
of
though.
every
John does make
female
a valid
character.
point. But if you want to say, for the sake of being a
female
doctor,
in the tribe is taught those types of medicine.
See, here's
that's
where
the
I
thing,
would.
is like females were taught
also,
that.
I think the warriors were also taught battle dress as well. I mean, that's
Maybe.
actually something they teach
Not
us in
according
boot
to
camp.
Wikipedia.
Oh,
Right.
According to Wikipedia, they were mostly spent hunting, teaching how to hunt. A boy
So-
goes after his first buffalo by the age of 15 or 16.
also
Okay.
they were dumb.
So here's what I would argue, and this is how you would instantly get me on board with this being a good movie. You have to do one of two things. One, she has to not have had scenes where it really looked like she was basically going to be taking over as the medicine woman of the tribe. Okay, you have to rework those scenes entirely. If you do that, I'm fine with it. I don't really have a leg to stand on then, and I'm good with it. Or two, all right, show scenes where, for whatever reason, it is made clear that the tribe was training her as a warrior, as a hunter. If you give me one of those two where the tribe has agreed that she should be doing this, we get an older council of dudes going, no, she should be doing it.
No,
Then
that
I'm
was
good.
agreed on. At the very beginning of the movie, the first hunt, the hunt for the lion, was open. Like as it opens, it's her with her brother discussing this rite of passage that all apparently 12 to 15-year-olds are eligible for. So like it starts out with her saying, I'm finally of age, I would like to take this challenge. And the brother says, you're not ready. And she goes, I am. And then she goes off on a walk with her dog. We see her running around hunting a deer. And in that moment, she sees the Thunderbird, right? Which is actually the predator landing in. And then she goes back to her brother and says, I have to. The Thunderbird told me to. Like, I know for a fact that based off of our first discussion in the first scene, the Thunderbird scene, and now this conversation, I have to take this rite of passage. And the brother said, okay.
Well, okay.
And that's
you and
where
I will
the hunt
disagree, I
begins
think.
for the lion.
I think you and I disagree on a couple of interpretations of scenes, and I think that's where we're not quite gelling on this.
That's why I always say art is mostly subjective.
Exactly. And I think that the primary point of our interpretations that differ is that scene where she shows up to join the party that's going to go rescue the guy who's supposedly hunting the lion, right? Like the initial dude. Because that's initially why they brought her. That's initially why they were heading out to hunt this lion, is because they were under the impression that some dude went missing, so they were going out to find him. And that's when they figure out it's a lion. That scene, I think, when she initially shows up, is where you and I have a bit of a difference of opinion on stuff. Because his consent, I feel, was to bring her along as a medic and possibly as a tracker.
But how can you explain him explaining the ritual to her? He's teaching her what she's preparing herself for.
Right, because he's trying to talk her out of it.
Right, but like that's the same thing any coach does. Like he's not telling her he can't. He's telling her that like this is like, and then that's where the scene with the medicine woman comes in. At the end of that whole escapade is the medicine woman goes, "You aren't taking a rite of passage to become the coolest person in the tribe. You're taking a rite of passage to prove that you can survive, to prove that you can be relied upon to go out on your own and come back every single time with dinner."
Right.
And that's when she goes, "Oh, it's not about proving how smart I am. It's about coming home." And that's where you see her like her starts to turn to testing rather than just jumping the line. And that's why I say like this is one of the few.
I will give you that she gets a humility check.
Mary Sue does, right? But not just a humility check, a purpose check. Like her relationship with the rite of passage was, my badass brother did it, I can too. And the medicine woman goes, "No, your brother survived because that's what you're supposed to do. That's it. He's not special.
It's not about bringing back the head. It's bringing back your life."
Yeah, it's about coming back.
Exactly. And yes, you should be shamed if you fail, but shame. That's it. You should just feel a little ashamed that you failed. Like even the medicine woman doesn't take the time to denigrate her, doesn't take the time to make her feel bad. She just tells her like, if you're gonna do this, it's about survival. And I think that's like that set the whole tone for her fight with the Predator. Because like in the scenes where she joins the group, she explains like that's where they first find the foot. That's where they all call her crazy. Is because she goes, "What bear walks on two legs that many steps in a row?" And they're all like, "Dude, just shut up. We're busy. We're taking care of this sick guy." Right? And she's like, "But this is concerning." And they're like, "Shut up." Like,
okay, but to be fair,
it was very much like a young grunt, like a private talking to sergeants, and the sergeants are like, "Dude, we know what we're doing." But they didn't because they'd never interacted with a predator before. And
okay,
she
but
is just like, "I've learned all the things of hunting. These are all the things, like these are all the warning signs. They're all flickering in my head because I've never done this before. I'm scared. Why aren't you guys scared?" And their excuse is, "It's just a bear. It's not our problem."
Okay, let me recontextualize this just a little bit. Imagine, if you will, you're in the field and you've got a medic with you, okay? Your buddy is bleeding out on the floor. And the medic is suddenly way more concerned about something that looks like tracks you guys have never seen than fixing your buddy that's down. I don't know about you, but I would probably be saying to the medic, "Your job is there. Let us cover you while you get your damn job done."
But she wasn't the medic.
But
she was
that's
just
why
capable of understanding medicine, because at no point is she ever brought along any other adventure as a medic.
And I'm gonna go.
That's why I'm gonna say that's why that one scene that you and I seem to disagree on in terms of context is the crux of really whether you view this movie as a really great movie or not so great.
And I'm gonna go.
I think that's what it boils down to.
I'm gonna go ahead and
at the very least we figured out where the difference is.
And I'm gonna go ahead and throw the Swiss flag here.
Just the first minute and not the rest of the film is why it's a great movie. Is like the
Yeah.
only debate is whether or not she was doing the job she was assigned.
So let's go ahead and take a step back here, and I'm gonna try and bring some middle ground to the table, and that's so what Corione has pointed out, and what you guys have both basically uncovered in your discussion here, is there's a problem with the way the story was presented because it didn't clarify a few key details that were important to Corione, and John, you may have probably generally just kind of blurred the lines and made assumptions on. Now, I'm not saying that's for sure what you did. I'm just throwing that out there as an idea to kind of bridge the gap here, to be like, okay, so there's clearly an agreed upon issue with the narrative in that it didn't get the story across properly. And as a writer, that is extremely important. If you don't get your point across through concisely and clearly, that's on you, because you're the storyteller, and ultimately we are all responsible for how we communicate. But overall, guys, great discussion, great way to represent restoring respect in the discourse. You have a quick point, John, because I'd like to shift to what we did like. I do have a few points I'd like to make.
Oh yeah. I do.
Oh yeah, no. In that case, go for it. Keep talking.
Okay,
I'll
so
bring up my points.
what I did like, we'll start with kind of the somewhat less important to the bigger part. So, H. Marie pointed out that there was a problem with that it was a bit slow. She was like, I heard this movie's a bit slow to start, and she said this right during one of the big panoramic scenes of the scenery. And we're watching this on our big 4K TV, and I go, so if it takes a while just to get these beautiful shots of the scenery, okay. I thought the cinematography and the action, those two came to play with this movie. I thought the action was very well coordinated, despite some of my misgivings about it. It was still executed very well. If you love the violence and the gore, guess what? It's there. All kinds of fun stuff for that. So that was really good. Now, kind of contrary to what Corione was saying, real quick, fan mail from Rinshar. One thing I want to give credit to is that it's a modern action movie that was like 1.5 hours. Normalize 1.5 hour action movies again, please. Yes!
Dude!
Boom!
100%.
Yes. Totally agree. That's exactly my point into why I don't, this definitely misses the mark for me, and we'll give our final ratings before we move on to Terminal List, but it's several steps in the right direction, in my opinion. And the action and the choreography, and yes, the fact that they managed to tell the story in an hour and a half and still include beautiful scenery shots. This is still a good film, in my opinion.
Found it. She wasn't a medicine woman. She was the cook. In the line, the movie straight up says, "Who invited you?" And she said, "We won't be gone long enough to need a cook." She's a cook.
Well, I think that was more of a dig.
And I still think we're
And then-
missing
well,
supporting context
then is-
overall.
She knows medicine. Well, so I'm reading
I don't
want
wanna
to
get back into
script
that.
right now.
Yeah,
We've
let's
got
try
into
to
that.
let's
So,
try to move
now,
forward here.
a little contrary to what Corione pointed out with her abandoning her role, supposedly. Well, I do want to touch on that scene where she is supposed to go hunt and gather, and then she decides to grab her stuff and go. I think that there is a very important lesson learned in that very moment, that if we sort of set the context aside and try to relate to it from a modern perspective, I think it sends a very strong message of, if you want something in life, there's no handouts. The tribe wasn't going to give her a handout and just say, yeah, you know what, you stabbed the lion, that counts. No, she still had to prove herself going through the motions. So the tribe still stuck to its values, which I think is also important, because relating this to a modern dilemma, there's been a constant debate of making the standards for special forces like SEALs and sniper school easier so that women can pass. I am 1,000 bajillion% against that. I already have issues with physical standards being changed to accommodate women in the current armed forces. Not because I don't want women to serve. That is not the reason. It is simply because the physical standards exist so that you can be relied upon. That's always what they've ever been for. It's nothing to do with discrimination in the sense that, oh, you're a woman, well, we got to make sure the standards are there so you can't pass. No. Standards are there for very good reasons. Not to discriminate, well, it is to discriminate, but it's to discriminate those who can't prove themselves worthy of being in special forces. I could not be a SEAL. As much as I'd love to think that I have the mental capability, with SEAL training, it's not just mental. It is mostly physical. They beat the shit out of you because they are basically the United States' Spartans, as an example. Same with Marine Sniper School. It's not easy for a good reason. Well, she didn't get those standards changed. The tribe stuck to its values, and she decided to stand up and go after what she wanted. And that's what I think, even though this movie has its flaws, I think that's still an important lesson to get across, is that if you want something in life, you gotta go after it. Go get it. Go take what you think is yours. Now, don't screw people over in the process. I'm against that. However, we haven't gotten this far. We didn't get our 68 subscribers by asking for it. We didn't go on other people's shows and say, hey, give us subs. I mean, we're working on that, but we're not doing it from like we deserve it or we think we should just by default. We're coming here every week presenting content because it's what we want to do, and it's what we will continue to do, and it's what we love to do. But we aren't expecting everyone to just show up and love us by default. As nice as that would be to go viral, it's just not going to happen. We have to, go through the grind like everybody else. We have to prove why we are here and why we are worth listening to. And that's what I got out of that scene when she grabbed her hunting gear and decided to go finish the job. And she did finish the job. I think that's my takeaway from what I felt was important in the movie, despite some of its flaws. But Corione, why don't you go ahead with what you liked?
Yeah, so the things I really did like. First, let's start with let's just start with the hunter, like the fur traders. That is, I loved that they didn't just assume everyone was speaking the same language.
Yeah.
And for the record, the French was accurate.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Do you know what he said? Because I couldn't understand a word of it.
I'd have to translate
Which
it.
is what I
subtitles
liked, by
didn't
the way.
show
I
me.
like that they didn't give us subtitles.
too.
I like that they didn't say directly what was being said. It's like, yeah, that's more
Yeah.
realistic.
No, well, no, like, I mean, I was able to translate it, but that's because, we have Quebec just across the way from us.
Yeah,
So we
you guys
had to
are
kinda
required to
learn
learn both languages.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was able to pick it up. He was basically talking about, like, what the hell is this woman doing out in the middle of nowhere? There was a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Mm.
Do you think it's their people that have been taking us? In fact, they were under the impression that it was the Comanches that were killing everybody, not the Predator, from what I was getting. So that's kind of cool. I like that. I like that there was that kind of level of suspicion there. I love that the French dude who had lost his leg there was trying to teach her how to use the pistol as quickly as he possibly could, because he realized at that moment, like, I'm going to be useless here. The best thing I can do is try to survive, and if this chick is willing to keep me alive, then hopefully she'll continue to do so. So let's arm her as best I know how to do. I really liked that she brought the Predator back to that bog she found. That was a fantastic, smart use of terrain and positioning to get the advantage, which is something I am always in favor of showing, right? I don't know. Okay, I know all the Canadian military manuals start with everything in here is just a guide. In an actual environment, terrain dictates all. So I don't know if you guys have that down there, but that's what we get.
Well, I wouldn't say it definitely, for my side of the house, which, the terrain's pretty much the same regardless. The sea doesn't
The terrain
really
is
change.
wet.
The sea only changes in a storm. Most of the time, it's usually the same. No, there's definitely there's definitely those like myself who believe that the policy should not have been considered law. And that was one of the problems before I got out, that I started noticing the service gravitating towards like policy equals law. And I don't agree with that. I'm pretty sure that they're going to get people killed because of policy. They have, and they're going to do it again. So that was one of the reasons why I quit. And
one of the other things that I do want to bring up too, every Predator movie I've
Real
seen
quick.
so far.
Yes, I agree. Policy is supposed to be more of a guideline, not law. That's what.
Yeah. One of the other pieces that I thought was just thank you. Every Predator movie up until this point wasn't produced in HD. It wasn't produced in 4K. You could see they went all out to make sure that they were taking advantage of the higher definition to be able to make those fights not look like they were fighting some sort of big giant ape, and they were fighting a very scary creature, and you were able to get all the perfect little moments in beautiful display. They took their time to not rush things, to give you just enough time to absorb what was going on in the screen. So it wasn't so fast it was blurry, but it wasn't so slow that it didn't convey a sense of urgency in the scenes. So their director of the action sequences did an absolutely flawless job, and I really commend his work for that. So those are my big pieces.
John, what did you like? I mean, you've kind of stated some of it. That's okay, but maybe there's other points you want to make.
Well, so I love the fact that like to me, while Corian and I do disagree on that one position, like her position in the tribe, what I love is the fact that this really was a movie about individual spirit. I've been studying things like the art of war, studying things like hunting in general. I am a hunter, and the things that this movie really like showed me was the true spirit of the Predators. It wasn't this idea of we can kill anything, watch. It was, no, we're so good we can go toe to toe with anything, and we can stand up to it. And the whole movie, it was slow, but in the slowness, it was explaining, it was exposition, it was, walking us through the world that they're in, the bog scene. I loved that the bog scene was not like this, oh, look at her being exactly like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I loved that when she pulled him back to the bog, she had no idea that the bog was gonna cover her temperature, but what she did know that was going to cover her temperature was the roots. And the reason that she knew that was because she gave those the medicine to the Frenchman without his leg, and the Predator didn't acknowledge his existence until he saw that dude's leg, and he went, ah, and then the Predator just
you bring up a point. Sorry, you brought up a point that I hated.
Coming.
You brought up a point that I did not like. I hated that. I saw that and I'm like, come on. He's this tactful and he knows his surround. He literally let a freaking snake slither around him, but he just steps on the dude's corpse like he's not paying attention.
No, because
bullshit.
No, it's not though. It wasn't not paying attention. It was literally you see the blue, right? You see the thermal, and he looks at the body and there's no heat, which to me was like concerning. Like aside from like the obvious like heat of the heart, but like that's what he expected is like humans have a few heartbeats after dying.
So he didn't.
There's still warm blood in them, and that's when he stepped past the leg and kicked it as he was walking by, and the guy jumps up. The Predator literally just freaks out and stabs him in the throat.
Okay,
because the Predator did not expect that at all, and that's when she goes, "Oh, that matters." He can't see living people. Like she watched away. She watched the Predator ignore him, and the Predator like found the blood trail and was like, "Oh, I guess this guy just died as he was crawling away." And the guy's like faking being dead, right? And the Predator ignores him because he's dead, and then steps on him. Boom! Predator punches him with the claws. Then, like as it goes on, when the bog scene shows up, there's the helmet. Like a lot, I've heard people discuss it. Like the helmet didn't make any sense, and like it did, because when he went toe to toe with the brother whooped his ass in speed. The brother was so fast, so strong, so like pew, pew, shooting arrows. There was no way she could have at any point been anywhere near her brother's physical prowess, which I thought was so finally like she's not a Mary Sue, because her brother was 100 times better than her, and if her brother had just paid attention and noticed that things were wrong, then the brother would have won that fight. But the brother didn't know he was fighting a predator or a superior being until like 1 minute before he died, or like 10 minutes in the movie before he died, right? And I think that was such an awesome display of like, oh, that's what a Comanche male warrior, peak war chief looks like. And that's why this young girl doesn't do it up. This young girl like has to be witty. And you see in the scene where the brother knocks the helmet off and the predator actually attempts to use the predator uses the helmet, not knowing that it's off its head for some reason. That part did kind of confuse me, but there was like a clear display of each of her plan coming together, each piece of her plan coming together. And as that plan was came to fruition, there was at no point that she used a magic stick to do it. Like, even though her axe was a pretty unbelievable device, this just in, Parker's been abducted. You all saw it. Aliens caught on YouTube live. Oh, they returned him.
PD,
Maybe.
are you
I agree
okay?
with everything. You're all correct. Prey is greatest movie ever made.
The Hollywood Lizard Illuminati.
The older Predator is dumb.
No, I'm just kidding. H. Marie came home, and when she opens the door on the camera, it looks like a bomb goes off. So I decided, I'm gonna play with it this time, have some fun. Of course, those listening to the podcast, yeah, sorry, you're gonna miss out on the video. But go watch it on the replay on our YouTube.
Exactly. I just love that this movie, even though it was about a female lead in a time where, like, we've got Wonder Woman 1984, where she literally is a god, and she's making the most naive human choices of all time, even though she's almost 1,000 years old. Like, that frustrates me. And when you talk about all the other Mary Sues that we've seen lately, it's annoying. And for once, I watched this movie. I watched a female lead do things that I, as a male, care about, like hunting, like being a warrior, like proving everybody wrong. And she did it according to the story, and everything that she did was shown in an earlier scene to work. It wasn't like she was just magically capable. And we watch her fail. We watch her hit the abyss. We watch her come out a different person. And that's what you demand of a hero's journey. And for once, we got it. And we got it in a really cool way. Also, I've always respected the history of American Indians and Native Americans, or the First Peoples, but I've never truly seen a movie that respects them the way I wish it would until now. Like we didn't get a lot of culture. We mostly got what I would assume would happen in a family dynamic, what would happen in a small squad, and all of that tracks. But what we did get of their culture was camaraderie, a spirit of corps, true stick togetherness. Like,
if the Comanche
only gets talked about in books and movies. Like, nowadays, like, even in the Marines, like, once you join your unit, half your unit leaves 6 months later to go to another unit.
Right.
So you have no unit allegiance.
And if
the Comanche, the tribalism, like, you have allegiance to your tribe, and this movie really showed what that means.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, and if the Comanche were known for being warriors, I'd say we got a pretty good dose of cultural.
I would argue that they shared their. I would argue that if the Comanche are warriors, they shared their culture with that predator pretty efficiently.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
It definitely got a proper cultural indoctrination from the Comanche.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this discussion up. Unless there's any quick final points you guys want to make, and then we'll move on to our community watch through terminal list. Well, actually, we're gonna move on to sponsor time. Then we watch through terminal.
Well, I just actually want to thank John, because he provided a perspective that I thought was interesting. I mean, I disagree with it, but I love the fact that him and I could have a pretty heated discussion, but still be cool about it the whole way through. So, dude, awesome debate. I look forward to the next time we disagree on a movie.
I would definitely rate that debate with a solid 7.
Yeah.
Well, to you and to everybody, that's as far as I'm going to take it in terms of aggression.
Oh,
I
yeah.
will only focus on the points that I know I can prove. I'm not going to spend time pretending like I'm jumping around.
Yeah.
I think that's how we should talk. And if we do have emotion, it's fine, but that doesn't mean you take it out on the person you're debating with. You prove your point, or you're sitting there.
Argue the points, not the person.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Fan mail from one of our Twitch followers, Gangles. Sorry. Just
Welcome
stopping
back.
by to say hey and drop an alert. Hey, thanks. We appreciate it. Been meaning to catch a couple of your streams. Just been real busy, but we definitely want to probably help if I also subscribed on my PD York Twitch, then I could actually get notifications. But no, we appreciate any and all love and support you can give. Is we simulcast for a reason. So John, what would you give? What's your rating on our 7-point scale? What do you rate and why?
I give it a 6 out of 7 purely because I know that Corione isn't coming at this from a point of subjective opinion. So if the fact that he didn't see what I saw, then you're right, Parker. The writers missed a point, and for that they get a 6 out of 7. To me, it's an A movie. I recommend it to anybody ever, but it's not a perfect A+ because there's this debate.
Yeah, if we were to break this down, I would say there's definitely areas it earns 7s from me as the points I brought, but I agree, it doesn't quite hit the mark for Orion. Why don't you go ahead?
You know what? Given John's perspective, it's given me some more information to work from. So I think I'm probably going to put it at a 5. I feel like it's definitely something that could be rewatched. It's definitely something I would possibly throw on. If I do a Predator marathon, it's going to make the marathon, right? It's not going to get Alien vs. Predator 2'd, which is, I just don't include that in the rewatch. But I do think it has some work it has to do. I think there was some writing points that, if they had been clarified, you could have had a fantastic movie here. And if they ever do a director's cut, I sincerely hope that those points are in there. And if they do, I reserve the right to revise my score.
Yeah. I was thinking about it today, and I was gonna go with a 4 out of 7 because I saw myself not ever watching this again, at least initially. Now it'll probably be a good while before I do, but after our discussion, I could see myself maybe coming back to this in a couple of years, honestly, and maybe doing a full-on Predator marathon for a future episode, because yeah, it's a lot of the right points. It's a beautiful movie to look at. I definitely encourage people to see it at least once, and since we've discussed it and there may be a replay in my future, I will agree with Corione. 5 out of 7 movie.